Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Um, my name is Diane Schwierep, and I'm the host tonight for this webinar with Damian Mark Smyth, sorry. And I am the administrator of You Can't 3P the Human Out of You. And tonight we're going to be talking about deep listening. So I'm not really big on introductions. I usually, I don't like to introduce someone with what they've done, with their books. I mean, I know Damien has written a book, it's called Do Nothing. But I was particularly touched by Damien because of one post that he wrote on Facebook I think it was in January, I'm not sure when. And the title was, I Don't Love Myself. And it struck me because maybe it's my illusion, I don't know. It struck me because, okay, there's this man who's written a book, who's been a speaker on TEDx, and it really touched me because I could relate to him coming out and saying, listen, I'm human. And I contacted him, I contacted Damien, I contacted you, and then we had a short conversation, a very short one, and I thought, I really like to invite him on a webinar in my group, because I gravitate towards people who really show their humanity, even with respect to, not with respect. The three principles are there as a description of how we live, how life works. But I really resonate to people who are, listen, I have the principles, I know about the principles, but I'm still human. And I could see that you really wear your heart on your sleeve. So that's where I'm coming from, Damien, in this. And I know that you're really passionate about deep listening. So for me, the idea is, well, as I never prepare myself, is that you explain to us and you talk to us about this subject, which is very close to your heart. I know that your mentor is Jack Bransky, and I think it's something that's really close to his heart too. So I think I'll just pass the buck on to you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Fiona. So, firstly, I must apologise in case my internet connection drops in and out. It's a bit iffy here. I've gone into a different room to try and get a bit closer to the Wi-Fi. Hopefully, it'll be okay. Yeah, I think there's this misconception around the three principles that, you know, it gives you a better life or something. I don't know. It's just something I've kind of seen, and it doesn't resonate with me at all, because, you know, I've always said, whenever I do a training or a workshop or a retreat or whatever it is, I'll always say to people, this is a description of how it works. This is nothing more than that. She's just telling you how the system operates. It doesn't tell you what to do with it in any way, shape, or form. You know, I was taking my kids back just now, and I just had this metaphor sprung to mind. It's like holding a treasure map and saying you're rich, right? That seems to be what, you know, some people think about the principles. It's not giving you anything, because you are still going to be a human being, and you're still going to make mistakes, and everything's still going to look real to you, because that's the system. That's the way it's designed to operate. You know, you're meant to look out there at the world, and it's meant to look like it's out there. That's the way it's meant to happen. We've been created by billions of years of nature for that exact thing to happen. And the principles are just a description of that. You know, we have this energy running through us. We have these thoughts, and they're made conscious. And Sid just saw that it's and the implications of that are whatever you make of them. I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. I believe in a grand organized design. I believe that there is something way more intelligent than me and us. We are atoms. This has been said a lot on the radio today with Stephen Hawking dying. We're atoms that can contemplate atoms, and there seems to be some sort of design and intelligence built into it. And some people call that God. I call it grand organized design. And what I've just found is that the more I point in this direction of this is how the operating system works, the more I can let that operating system do the heavy lifting. In other words, I think in Michael Neer's latest book, it was a beautiful line. He says, the intelligence that designed you knows how to live you. And that's it.
I think we've just lost Damian, right? Yeah. Yeah, for me too, Fiona. We just I'll just send him a message and tell him that we'll give him a few minutes.
No, is anyone there?
Yes, we are. You're back.
I'm back.
Okay.
So it just keeps saying my internet connection is unstable. So if you can hear me, okay. If you can't hear me, just shout and I'll say what I said again.
We lost you. I'm not sure where we lost you now. I'm sorry.
So just saying that, understanding, the three principles is just understanding that this is how the process is working. It's not telling you, you can be happier. It's not saying you should do anything. And what I found is that, as I say, the less I try, but the less I think that I'm the one who's doing it, the easier things get. Now, that's just a rule of thumb that I've found. It might not be the same for some people. I've worked with entrepreneurs who love like battering down walls with their intelligence and their intellect, and that's the way they're designed. Telling them to kind of like chill out and let the operating system do the heavy lifting, well, that's not going to go down too well with them. Now, that might be the case, but that's prescriptive. And as I always say, this is just a description. It's not prescriptive in any way. So for me, the route into that intelligence, which is doing the work, that energy behind life is doing something right now. It's doing everything. Yeah, it's living you all. It's giving you that consciousness. It's giving you the thoughts. It's running this computer. It's doing the lighting. It's like it's running the whole damn show. Right? That intelligence, that energy, that life that is kind of streaming through everything. It's doing it all, and we're not doing that. You're not making yourself live. You don't have any control over that. But you're tapped into it. You're tapped into that intelligence. And part of, I think, one of the things that I've realized in terms of who I am is I'm basically someone who's a bit lazy and likes to get to the end result fast. Yeah, I kind of want the answers now, and I don't really want to do the hard work. I'd rather do the shortcut. Yeah, I'd rather do the hack version. So I'm always kind of looking for those, does anyone know of a shortcut, a short way around this? Is there like a quick route to enlightenment? Can anyone kind of give us a heads up? So, I love, technology stuff. I love, listening to Dave Asprey and Tim Ferriss and looking at the latest stuff from the Quantum Gravity Institute, and just kind of like letting it all kind of sink in, and just kind of see where it kind of all sits. And I think I posted on Facebook the other day, I think the principles are a cornerstone of that whole picture. I think what Sid saw was that it's like they're a golden key to it, because they're basically telling us about what it is to be human. And we seem to be the most advanced intelligence in the universe. So it's kind of like having, it's like being given an instruction manual for how we operate, and then as a result of seeing that, this is where it gets interesting. So as a result of seeing it, that I'm the one creating my own version of life from moment to moment to moment. When I see that, because we all always forget, when I see that, it can be really liberating. When and I'm one of these people that I know there's this whole thing about choice, no choice, etc. I just think that we're all part of this energy, and we're all part of this game. We're the ones who take it seriously or not. Nature doesn't take itself seriously. Right? We're the only beings in nature that takes ourselves seriously, which is kind of a joke in itself, because we made that up. We are part of nature, and so in that respect, we're playing on the house's money. It's a game. It can be anything that we make of it. It can be fun, it can be exciting, it can be exhilarating, it can be crap, it can be the worst thing in the world, or it can be the best thing in the world. It's irrelevant. It's actually irrelevant. And so when we see that, when we remember that, and I think the principles is a kind of a guidebook to that, it's kind of pointing in that direction, it's actually liberating. You look at Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, between stimulus and response. You look at Epicurus and the Stoics, and they're all saying the same thing. They're all pointing to the same thing. Life is neutral. It is only our perception that gives anything meaning, and we can only perceive our perception. It's nothing new. And what Sid did is he came along and he saw that actually, if we just turn that into, because it didn't start as 3 principles, it started at like 7 or something. And it was like, well, if we just had this code that we could deliver to people that kind of made sense, then that's going to be a kind of a good way to get this over. And I spent the last 5 years creating courses that hack the system, that can get it over in a much quicker time. You're always told it's like, oh, you have to have an overnight and you have to have intakes. I don't. I've turned up and done like 30 people in the room, never met them before. Yes, the overnights kind of work better than the one-dayers, but I've done a 90-minute version. I'm always looking to get that kind of short. And I spoke to a guy today who's works in simulation, and he's working on a version of getting the principles out in a simulation version. And there'll be AI versions, and there's going to be all sorts of stuff happening in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so one of the ways for me that I've kind of found to deliver this really effectively is through deep listening. And it's a really simple process, and Jack does it brilliantly. When we did the retreat in Cape Verde with Jack, it's such a great example of how you can actually immerse yourself in the feeling of the principles without even talking about the 3 principles. Right? Get people to connect on a deep level by teaching, by basically pushing and getting them to listen deeply, like beyond the words. Like, listen for the feeling, listen for the feeling, listen for the feeling. Go deeper, go deeper. Right, take a break. Right, now go deeper again. Okay, take a break. Now go deeper again. Take a break. And then you just keep on basically getting people to connect, to deep listen. In the same way that, you know, anyone that's got kids, you know, when you're playing with a kid and they're in that state of meditation and you're in that state of meditation, you just take one look at each other and you just nod, and it's like, yeah, this is deep connection. You know, no words needed. Or with a dog, or, you know, with a partner or whatever, you know, just that moment of like deep connection. But get that happening over a period of like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. To get people into that state of really connecting. That you can't see me because my video makes my my audio cut out. Hold on a sec. Just to show you, Nessa, that I'm not in a chicken suit. There you go. I'm going to go and get a chicken suit now. And then I'll just put it on again. It'll be like, so get people to be in that kind of really connected state, and then get them to look out from where they are. Right. So get them into that feeling of like deep connection, and then say, right, now look back out at the world and see where you're at. And they're in this like, whoa, this is great, you know. And you say, well, would you like to know the process behind that? It's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Let's go. Well, sit back, 3 principles, blah. And then it's much more effective because it's experiential first. What I've found is when you go and talk to people about the 3 principles, you know, half the people in a room, if they've never heard of you before, or even if they have, they're not really connected. Right? They're just like, oh, I hope I get something out of this. I hope he's not an idiot. You know, they've got all their own stuff going on. So getting at people into that space of connection first, and then giving them something that's useful, is actually really, really, really good way I found to actually deliver this. And to the point where I got back from Cape Verde and I delivered my 2-day Will to Act workshop, which is basically 2 days of the principles with entrepreneurs. We're doing it with vets in May. It's exactly the same course. It changes every time, but it's pretty much, you know, whatever comes up and kind of points people in this direction. And I would say that of the, oh God, I don't know how many courses I've run now, but I've been doing them nearly for 5 years. I'd say the success rate, what I mean by that is the amount of people that come out of one of those courses and have really seen something like deeply used to be like 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 people would come away and they would spend, I mean, I've seen them at conferences, I've seen them, you know, online in groups. Something has deeply affected them. So that's like a 20% hit rate, I would say. And, you know, I've improved on that. Sometimes I've got better than that. Not usually any worse than that. And as a result of doing the deep listening retreat with Jack, I just basically went in and I did 2 days, exactly the same course, but I just did it from a place of absolute connection, getting people connected. I did like 6 listening exercises over the course over 2 days, and really kind of focused on that deep listening and the connection and what that meant and what it then meant to look back out. And there was 30 people in the room. I didn't know any of them before I got there. That's not true. I knew 2 of them. And 26 of them had a massive shift. I mean, like life-changing shift. So that's 4 out of 5 instead of 1 out of 5. So I was like, oh, okay, this is it. This is the delivery system. You know, get them into that space of really deep listening, and then you can point towards the principles, and they'll have a massive shift. So that's kind of why the deep listening is really important for me at the moment. I say important, you know, as I say, we're playing on the house's money. It's, no one needs changing, but do you know what? We're here. It's life. Why not? Have fun. Go out there, talk about it. You know, enjoy. And of course, the other kind of side to that is deep listening to yourself. So I've been doing a fair bit of work with addiction recently, and I've come across a guy called Gabor Mate. Don't know if anyone's heard of Gabor. He was interviewed on Tim Ferriss's podcast. Was it Tim or Dave Asprey, one or the other, recently. And he does a lot of work with addicts, and talks a lot about the disconnect that happens when people go through trauma. And it was really funny because I came across him, well, middle of last year, and contacted him and asked him to kind of take a look at the principles, because to me there was something missing in what he was talking about, and it was the principles. And sent him a load of emails, didn't get a response back. And then he's being interviewed by Tim Ferriss, and he says something really interesting. He says, there is no such thing as trauma. Trauma is the disconnect within you from yourself as a result of your thinking. And I was like, hallelujah, he's seen it. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? I was thinking, maybe you read one of my emails, I don't know, whatever. But there's a couple of other bits in the interview. I thoroughly recommend you listen to it because it's really good. A couple of the other bits where he talks about thought being, that's it, it's all about thought, it's just thought. It's like, whoa, he's really picked up on this. And this is a guy that's like, you know, world renowned. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's definitely happening now. There's definitely a ripple effect. You know, I don't know if anyone knows Robin Sharbutt and Ken Manning, but they do a lot of this stuff in business, and they talk a lot about, you know, there'll be a point in the not too distant future where just having 3 principles in your LinkedIn title is going to give you a lot of credibility. Because people are going to be 3 principles. I've heard about that. You know, it's 3 principles, coach. And you know, it'll be a tipping point at some point. And you know, it might be as a result of something that one of you guys does. You never know. You just don't know. This is the point. You don't know. You cannot engineer the universe. You can't do it. You cannot engineer what's going to happen next. You just can't. And so why even, you know, don't even try. Just deep listen for the signs, listen for what to do next. Whether that's writing a blog post on, you know, love, or loving yourself, or not loving yourself, whether that's writing jokes. You know, this whole thing about, I think Amir is just brilliant at the moment, what the stuff he's doing. I actually thought that thread, I mean, there were some pretty funny gags on that thread. And to be honest, if we do a comedy show, I'm gonna raid that thread for the jokes I wrote on there. If you haven't seen it, check it out. There's a thread on the What the F of the Principles page, and it's all about, I can't even remember who started it and what he said. It doesn't actually talk about jokes. I think he talks about dogmas. And it's just, if you ever need cheering up, just go and read that thread. It's absolutely like side-splittingly good. Especially my jokes, they're absolutely amazing. I did reread a couple the other day, and I was doing a bit of a laugh out loud, thinking it's actually quite good. So yeah, I think my delivery needs some finesse. But then, you know, I saw Eddie Izzard. I saw his first ever gig recently, like big gig, and he was rubbish. I mean, I love Eddie Izzard. I think he's absolute genius. And you see like the stuff he's done in the last 10 years, it's just hilarious. You see that first gig he did in London, and it's like no one's laughing. It's just not funny. He's a bit funny, but so yes, you know, deep listening for me is at the moment, it's a delivery system for yourself, and if you want to share this with others, because it's experiential. You know, you can get someone to deep listen, you can get anybody, you can get, you know, kids to deep listen. You might not call it that, but you know, just get them settled and like, you know, can you hear your heartbeat? Can you hear what's going on in your head? You know, can you hear the raindrops outside? And this is one I did the other day, and Annie Rose and Micah were sitting there, and they were listening to the raindrops. And then Annie Rose said, "I can hear what Micah's thinking." And she's a 3-year-old. She said, "I can hear what Micah's thinking." So she was dropping into that connection space. And then Micah came over and gave her a big hug. Now Micah's 2. He doesn't know what that means, but she heard something beyond the raindrops because she was really attentive, and he picked up on the feeling of that. I mean, that was like, whoa, 2 and a 3-year-old. That's amazing. Jack said something really huge about this, actually. He said, if you say Sid's words, do you think you're going to have the same effect? What's the difference? It's because it's not about the words, it's about the feeling. And it's the same if you're sharing this with others. It almost doesn't matter what you say. In fact, doesn't matter what you say. It matters about what you feel and who you are. And this is, I think, where we're kind of like going beyond the words now, because this is what it's about. And this is the deep listening. You know, deep listening is not about listening. It's about connection. And it goes back to the Gabor Mate thing, where he sort of talks about, you know, the trauma is the disconnect with yourself. Well, when I was splitting up with Victoria, you know, there's a lot of stuff's happened this year. Like, a lot of really crap stuff has happened this year, like split ups, like near bankruptcy, all sorts of like crazy stuff going on. You know, people dying, just suicides, like left, right, and centre. And I know that I must be seeing something, because I've been right. You know, I mean, I've had some pretty crap days, but I know that they're not permanent, and that's the thing that gets me every time when I hear about suicides, because I just know that person, that the person that actually carried out that act was in a moment where they absolutely believed there was no other option. And I think that's the thing about to me, is about seeing how the human operating system works. You just know that it's temporary. It can't be permanent. And it's really hopeful in that respect. And just going back to the deep listening, you know, if I'm working with an addict and they're really struggling, nothing I'm going to say is going to make any difference. But if I really drop into that kind of feeling of love for them, they shift. I don't know, maybe maybe there's like a romantic in me that wants, you know, deep listening to be the route into love. I don't know, it's just words now, but I think there is something there. I'm going to keep exploring it and keep working with that. Maybe it is. Maybe deep listening is love. Maybe that's what it is. Be interesting to hear what everyone else thinks. Anyway, anyone want to ask me a question? I just feel like I've gone off on one somewhere.
Yeah, I have a question, but I'd rather see who wants to, and leave me out of this for now. So either raise your hand physically or raise your hand on the go to manage participants, but we're so few. Just raise your hand if you want to ask something, and I'll unmute you. I think I'm going to ask the question myself.
Go for it. Do it.
Well, as you were talking, and you were talking about deep listening, what I was thinking was, okay, there are some coaches here, and there are some I'm not sure if everyone is a coach. How many are coaches? Not everyone. Okay, so I'm wondering this deep listening, because it interests me particularly because of the conversations I have with my clients. But I think there's a lot of bull, because deep listening comes across is important across all spheres in life. Whether I'm a wife, whether I'm a husband, whether I'm listening to my child. So what's interesting to me is, well, it's verging onto a technique, but when you were talking, I get them to deep listen. How do you do that?
Are you talking about your clients?
No, I'm talking about deep listening. I mean, you say that you talked about deep listening in connection with, it could be love. You're talking about that you had this deep listening has given you a higher percentage of the impact and people seeing things really deeply and clearly. That is, you had it first, you had it in 1 on 5, and then you had it 4 on 5. Which the percentage is enormous. I mean, let's start from this. How do we deeply listen to ourselves? Because I think the first person that we need to really deeply listen to is us. Because if we deeply listen to us, we'll automatically deeply listen to others. And it always starts with me. I don't know if that's
Mm.
making any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of sound to me like you're saying, what is the technique?
Mm,
Um,
mm. Yeah, I
do you know
know.
what?
I'm aware of that.
Oh my God, what? How could you explain this? I don't know. I mean, Jack did it over 4 days, and he talked about it very upfront. He said we're just gonna drop into levels of listening. Um, how did he do that? I don't know. I mean, it's a lot easier when you've got a lot of time. When I was flying back from Cape Verde, and I just knew, because I was going straight into this 2-day course, and I just had the insight. It was like, this, I can't keep doing it the same way I've done it based on what I've just gone through. I'm going to do it a different way. And I spent 6 hours rewriting the course, none of which I used. So it's difficult to say, really. I mean, it was obviously work that I wanted to do and needed to do for whatever reason. But when I showed up on those 2 days, I sat at the front of the room on a stool, and I just dropped into this. I can only describe it as a state of deep meditation. Now I don't meditate. My success rate on meditation previous to that was like nothing. Like, zero. I've tried it so many times. Notice, tried. Um, sat with a candle and music and chants and nothing and space and whatever. Now, of course, what I missed is that I've been meditating for years, but by just dropping into the space of no doing and just being present. And so when I was just in front of that room, and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go into that, because I'd just been with Jack for a week, but doing the retreat for 4 days, so I was quite good at kind of dropping into the space. And it was just, I can't describe it. It was like everybody kind of, I don't know. It's like walking into a supermarket and smelling fresh bread. Everyone kind of like headed towards the fresh bread. it was it was just bizarre. It just kind of, everyone got settled and just dropped into that space as well. Um, I don't know. It was a calmness. It was connectedness. I can't describe it. It was just a space of connection.
Something's just come up for me. I've just spent a couple of hours, 1.5 hours on a webinar with Laurie Holmes,
Mm-hmm.
and I've noticed that, as you said before, it's in the feeling. It's not in the words. There were a couple of times when, how many were we? I think we were 4 or 5 in the room, and we just all went silent. And there was nothing particular that Laurie was talking, but I think the silence comes from what we were hearing, but what we saw. But what's uncanny for me is that it's like, that game with the numbers. I've forgotten. It's like, it's an effect, a dynamo. We all went silent, not just one person. We all went silent. We all had nothing to say. Just like this. And I think this is what you're talking about. Um, but I'm really interested, you guys, 'cause I'd like to have this to be an organic conversation, which means that we all participate if we want to, obviously, because I do tend to be a talker. Oh, okay, there we go.
Hello, it's Jeanette.
Hi, Jeanette.
Oh, I'm just switching screens down. I've got screens opening all over the place. Right, I'm not a coach. I'm actually a retired police officer. I did 30 years in the police, and I've had 18 months where I haven't worked. I've just been enjoying my retirement. But I'm also a Reiki practitioner, which I've had lots of Reiki because I was suffering with pretty severe anxiety about 4 years ago, and it's really helped me. So I trained to practice. But when I'm actually practicing Reiki, what I'm actually doing is deep listening. What I'm actually doing is loving that other person, because that really is all we are. And I've gone. I feel. I'm feeling very tingly, and that sounds so bloody pink and fluffy when I say it. But I genuinely believe this deep down in my soul. That is how I feel. And I know from when I was a police officer and things went tits up like it, they occasionally did, and people weren't particularly happy with the service that had been provided, for want of a better word, expression. They just wanted to be heard. They didn't necessarily want you to fix things. And this is so similar to what the 3Ps is all about. We're not here to fix anyone because they don't need to be fixed. But we are here to love each other. And one of the most loving things you can do is listen to someone and let someone be heard without trying to fix it. Because a lot of the time, if you're trying to fix it, it's actually your ego. It's your want. And we don't know what that person, well, they don't need anything. We might think we know what they need, but we don't, because they don't need fixing. So for me, the deep listening is pure love. And for me, I know that I go into a deeply meditative, literally like that when I'm practicing. And it's just an expression of love transmit, and you can transmit energy. You absolutely can. You can walk into a room and you'll feel a vibe. And that's the energy, can't you? You know, we've all done it. We've walked into a room and thought, oh, this is just a lovely feeling about it. And equally, I know I've walked into rooms and I've just thought, and it's just energy, which is all there is, really. And you can transmit that, definitely. And by deep listening, it is one of the most loving things that we can do for each other, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head with the Reiki. It is, and also, the inside to out. I mean, I know there's some people that just talking about, thoughts are just thoughts, and it only works inside. It's like, well, no, that's not what physics is saying, actually. But this is what I love about the principles, because it's just very simple. It's like this energy's coming through you. You're experiencing this energy, and you're creating your world through your thinking, which you're experiencing through your consciousness. That's the process. That's it. It's not saying it's just your thinking. It's not saying thoughts don't have power. It's not saying any of that stuff. That's kind of added on. That's bolted on. And I've done that before in the past, but it's always felt a bit weird when I've said that. It's like, well, are thoughts just thoughts? Well, actually, no, they are energy, and they are, you know, real. They are something, and they do have some sort of power. But it's still the direction of the process. It's still coming through you.
Yeah.
That's, you know, science will not argue with you on that one. And then going back to what Sid was, I think, talking about, which is all we are is love at our core. And that's all we really truly are. Then that just fits in beautifully with what you've just said, because that is really it. It's like, well, if that's, you know, Jack says, all we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we're not. That's it.
Yeah. And I am the first person to say that, you know, Reiki and other techniques or practices is an outside in. However, it's a stepping stone for people.
Can you just clarify that? What do you mean it's outside in?
Well, if somebody, say for example, somebody may become like they need, I can't function if I don't have my weekly Reiki appointment. That's an outside in, isn't it? They're looking to then fix themselves with.
So their belief that they need it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. That you know could happen. However, for me, it's a stepping stone for people into this understanding. You know. And some people need that. Some people need a little handhold. You can't just straight away sort of start to talk to somebody that's, if somebody had said to me 4 years ago, oh, it's just your thoughts, I'd have probably knocked their head off. Well, I wouldn't, because I'd have lost my job, but you know what I mean. You know, if somebody had said, you know, well, you know, you're not really experiencing such and such a person, you're not really, you're experiencing your thoughts about them, I would have argued all day long. It's taken, I mean, I actually only discovered the 3 principles. I'd never even heard of it until about August of September of last year, and it's just made so much sense to me. And that's the thing, it makes so much sense, but it wouldn't have done 4 years ago, because I was just, you know, completely in massive thought storm, and suffering really quite badly with anxiety and panic attacks. But it's been a gentle step-by-step process for me through mindfulness, then having lots of Reiki myself, becoming a practitioner, and then at the right time, this understanding just almost appeared out of nowhere on my iPad. But I wouldn't have been ready for it.
At the right time. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a really good example of, you know, I think maybe a misunderstanding of how some people talk about it, which is, you know, people, but don't forget, humans are the only things in nature that have an opinion. Right. So we're the only ones that basically say, oh, that's not any good. You know, that could be better. Or we don't like that. Right. That we are the only species that has an opinion, and vocalizes it. Oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe dolphins do. Maybe I'm not doing them justice, but so the principles is saying that you still have to have a thought about someone, whether they're a dickhead or not, for it to be in your experience.
I know a few of them,
and that can only work. That can only be coming from you. It can't be coming from anywhere else. Now, that person may or may not be, you know, again, this is what when I said about, you know, we're playing on God's money, grand organized design's money. It's like, life is life, but we're the ones giving it meaning. And that's happening through our thinking too. All of it. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, you know, perceived reality, real reality, whatever we think, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether we forget, whether we don't. It's all still only happening one way, and it's all still only happening through our thinking in the moment. That's it. That's why what we've got with the principles is so ridiculously simple, and we seem to make it really complicated, but it just isn't.
No.
It's just saying this is how the thing's happening. You're creating your experience. You're creating your experience. You're creating your experience. You're creating your experience. Yeah, but what about? Doesn't matter. You're creating your experience. You're creating your experience. And, you know, you can even then argue about the you're. Well, who's the you're? It's not really you. It's coming through you, whatever that is. It's like we are the radio set and the radio station is playing through us. We don't get to pick the tunes. We just get to choose whether we dance or not. That's it. And that in itself, you know, do we have choice? No. You know, it's been proven again scientifically that we don't actually choose our thoughts. They are already predetermined, sometimes as much as 6 seconds before they come into our heads. So rather than getting all kind of hung up on, well, where's it coming from? No one knows the answer to that one. Just know that that's how it's happening and just play with it, you know. Okay, well, if I don't choose my thoughts, then I'm going to go and choose not to get pissed off about it.
Yeah.
So this is not prescriptive. Every single time I ever do anything with anyone, I keep saying, this isn't prescriptive. This isn't prescriptive. It's not telling you how to do anything. This is just saying this is how it works to the best of our knowledge. That's it. That's it. And this is why I love, you know, modern science and what we're doing with modern science and what we're starting to understand about the quantum world and the, you know, cosmological world and the infinite universe. It's just, we are just starting to, you know, we are not even capable of actually comprehending the infinite. And yet that is probably what we're in. We're probably in an infinite universe. And science has pretty much said, it's kind of infinite. We just can't understand what that means. Of course we can't, because we've been filtered with this thing called intelligence and logic and whatever else we've got. The filters that we've got, that's our understanding. You know, the holes in the filter will only allow in certain things, and the rest it will filter out. It can't let infinite in because it can't comprehend it. And yet, ironically, and I think this is maybe the next stage of deep listening, you know, and this maybe is where you see that people that, you know, have really deeply, oh, everyone's frozen. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
This is maybe when you kind of get or sort of see that people who go in, have out of body experiences, have, you know, been studying meditation for like 20, 30 years and have had like a deep enlightenment. Maybe that's it. Maybe that is the next level. Maybe that's the next hack, you know, to go to that sort of state of, oh yeah, we are infinite beings and oh, there really is nothing to worry about. And that's still happening in the same process. I don't know. Maybe that will happen to you guys. Maybe that happened to me. But I think this, you know, as I said at the beginning, saying the principles does anything for you is like holding a treasure map and saying you're rich. It's what it does is it shows you where the treasure is. You know, it's just pointing to it. And I think that's why people are getting excited about it, because it's, you know, it's a treasure map. At the end of the day, you know, mate, you're not rich, but you've got a treasure map in your hands. So I just know that, you know, from the moment I kind of came across this and to the point, to the tiny amount that I actually kind of see it when I do, because this is it. You know, now you see it, now you don't.
Mm.
You know, to the minimal amount that I kind of see it, and when it's almost when I see the simplicity of it, I see it way deeper. You know, I just know that this is the direction I'm going to be pointing until the day I die, because it's the cornerstone. It just explains everything else to me. It's just like, oh yeah, well that kind of explains it, because if you know that, you know, and again, science is catching up with this. It's like, yeah, you are the creator. Yeah, you are the creator. Oh, it's coming through you. It's coming through you. You know, we're the. I had this insight the other day, which really kind of blew my mind. You know, if you look everywhere in nature, everything's replicated. I don't know if anyone's read Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski, but he meets David Bohm, the theoretical physicist, who talks about the holographic universe. Everything's enfolded into everything else, and you see it in nature. You see the Fibonacci sequence everywhere in nature. You see, things on a small scale happen on a massive cosmological scale. And it just occurred to me that really what's happening within each of us, from moment to moment to moment, as we create this experience of life, is just mini big bangs. We're just having this mini big bang moment of mind, thought, consciousness, kind of like miniature nuclear explosions of experience from moment to moment. We are basically nuclear machines, and we are, that's, again, it's science has shown it. We have so much incredible power within us. And I just thought, wow, isn't that great? That we're this, like, we're just these mini universes, like, exploding this experience inside of us. And just even that, to be kind of pointed towards that and showing an operating system that's like running through everyone, and you're always creating this experience with pulsating of life that's creating experience. And just kind of sitting with that and connecting with that can be mind-blowing. Doesn't take much to blow my mind, having said that, but
I'm wondering if Fiona has anything to add, or Nessa, or Shanine. I'm curious. Okay, here we go. Hi, Shanine.
Shanine, come in, Shanine.
Oh. Hello, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I feel inspired to share some of my personal experiences with learning about this understanding and how it's affected how I show up, and how me changing how I show up has had a huge impact on the work that I do and my relationships. I definitely resonate with what you said, Damian, about deep listening, and you, Jeanette, as well. Deep listening being love. And I think that the most beautiful thing that we can do for one another is to be present with one another, fully present in our wholeness, complete, and just sharing that feeling of presence and connection with one another. So I work in the mental health field, and I've worked in mental health for 10 years. And until I only learned about the principles a couple of months ago, it was at the beginning of January, although it feels like it's been lifetimes since then, because there's just been so much wisdom and insight flowing in. But up until learning about the principles, when I worked with my clients, I was very much going in with the objective of changing their thinking or changing their circumstances. And it was very much focused on that outside in, and that's the only way that things can ever get better. But since learning about the principles, within just a few short months of working with my clients, and I guess just me being present with people. I've worked a lot less than I ever did do in the past. I don't do anything now these days. I literally just show up. And but the transformations that people are having just from allowing that space for people to connect to their own creative source and to realize their own power and to realize their own ability to connect to this inner well-being, and that there's nothing outside of them that they ever need to connect them to that ability to do that is already within them. And just yeah, just showing up, being present, and just listening to and responding to whatever turns up has been huge for me in my work and also in my personal relationships as well. So I definitely feel like there's something in deep listening and that feeling of connection and love, and I'm definitely experiencing that for myself in my life, and I just feel really excited about continuing to explore that and just diving deeper into that feeling, I guess, and yeah, just letting life unfold by being present and by being loved, just by being present, just being myself and expressing whatever it is that wants to come out in the moment and sharing that with the people around me. It just feels really nice to be able to do that. So
whereabouts do you work, Janine?
I work in Leeds.
In Leeds, okay.
Mm.
I was wondering if you were working down with Robin Lockhart in London.
No, I've never heard of Robin Lockhart.
Oh, you should connect. He's great. He's been doing lots of stuff in.
Okay, lovely. I'll check him out. Thank you.
You can get with me on Facebook. I'll link you two up actually.
Lovely. Thank you. Yes, I will.
Thank you, Janine. We have a question from Nessa, and her question is, how do you work with suicidal people?
So I work one-to-one with. It's funny actually. I mean, it's like every single day I hear. Well, obviously now I'm doing a lot more work with Vets Health, but I'll tell you that in a minute. For a long period of time, like every day, I would hear someone would come to me and tell me a story about suicide. And it's been in the family as well, and I had this deep sense of kind of loss whenever I heard, even if I read a story on the news about someone committing suicide, and so it just got more into my client work. You know, I would have people that would, you know, be clients and then say that they had suicidal tendencies or suicidal ideation, or they tried to commit suicide, or have a family member contact me saying, you know, they recently tried to commit suicide or whatever. So it got into my work a lot more. And I mean, I had one story from a while back where I helped. I had a couple of clients that I kind of helped out of a situation where they were sort of on the verge of committing suicide. And then more recently, well, a client I was working with last year, whose husband's a vet, Megan Taylor, who runs the vet, she told me that veterinary practices have between 4 and 10 times the national average of suicide rate. And I was like, vet, not like, you know, war veterans. No, vets. So, really? I couldn't believe it. I was like, but it's like, you know, vocational. They're working with animals. Blah blah blah. It's like, so I did my research, and the reasons are, you know, quite obvious, really. I mean, they're a lot of them work alone. They have a very long time for them to actually train, because as a vet, you need to know everything from diagnosis through to euthanasia. They train to save animals, but they spend most of their time putting animals down, putting them out their misery. They're dealing with people who have a very short, sharp, and intense loving relationship, and, you know, telling them bad news a lot, and often getting, you know, the back end of that. And they have access to the means to do it effectively. If they want to do it, they'll do it, and they know how to do it, you know, compassionately. And there's lots of other reasons as well. You know, the types of people that get involved in veterinary practices. There's high stress rate. You know, you come out of veterinary school and basically you're asked to run a business and deal with clients as much as do the vet stuff. Long hours. I mean, there's just loads of reasons. So I was blown away by that. I was like, oh my god, that's huge. So we worked together on a program, which is basically the program that I've been doing for the last 5 years, the Will to Act course, to take that to vets. And it just escalated. Before I knew it, we had articles written and a website created, and meetings with buying groups that have 450 veterinary practices nationwide and are interested in taking this into the field. Mental health is big in veterinary industry right now. It's been talked about a lot. And even that escalated from, well, okay, well, we could start with vets, and then if that works, we could go to dentists, because the buying groups work with them as well, because it's anesthetics, and then potentially healthcare. So it's just kind of escalating in terms of, well, it's the same stuff that I've been doing, but it's just now one niche, with a very high suicide rate, which is kind of the story. And yeah, it's that. So it's gone from working with one-to-one clients to then working with practices, usually of sort of 12 to 15 people. But the suicide rate is astonishingly high. I mean, you hear about it a lot in veterinary practices, in veterinary industry. It's like people will talk about, oh yeah, so and so killed himself last year, and then the vet in the next practice sort of down the road like followed suit, did it, and then one of the nurses did it, and it's just, you think, oh my god, it's like an escalation. And they go into an industry where, within 3 years of being in it, they leave, they pivot, and they go and they leave, because it's just so they can't take it. So it started on a small scale, and it's now kind of escalating to a larger scale, and I kind of have a feeling that the story behind that is going to be what's potentially going to get the principals on the news. I hope a high profile vet may be committing suicide, us doing the work at the ground level to try and combat that, having written articles on it and talked about it. I'm already in touch with a couple of BBC journalists in the mental health side, just to sort of have my profile up there and just be kind of ready. I really hope it doesn't, because every 36 minutes someone commits suicide, and it's astonishing rate, and it really saddens me.
So, Damian, I got another question from Nissa. How do you actually work one-on-one with a suicidal person?
Depends on the person. Deeply listen. I did a session with a young lad yesterday, 13-year-old, who's already attempted suicide once. He's cut himself, self-harming. He had an incident at the weekend whereby he went to a party, his drink was spiked, and he did something, and now no one wants to speak to him. He doesn't know what he did. So yeah, it just kind of depends what shows up in the moment. The thing you don't do is you don't get into your head and think about, oh, what technique should I use? That's probably the last thing you should do. It's, back to what Shanine was saying. It's like, you just be present and just there's something about knowing that they're okay, but truly kind of knowing that really kind of reorientates you back to whatever comes out of your mouth next. Nessa says, should a suicidal person find a 3P practitioner who's also trained in mental health? Well, no, because yes, ideally, but I'm not trained in mental health. Well, I am from the end user point of view. I know about mental health because I've had my own issues, but I've never been trained in mental health. So that, I don't know, it's a difficult one. There's a lot of people out there who aren't 3P practitioners who are just as good because they're doing exactly what Shanine said. Yeah, so I don't necessarily think, and there's also, I would say, probably some 3P practitioners out there who would not be the right people to talk to. I've written an article recently on like causes of depression. Brain chemistry, it's like we're looking at the wrong way around. Brain chemistry is the result of the thinking carving out the pathways. It's the imbalances caused by thought causes it, and this is where the Gabor Mate stuff kind of fits in beautifully with this. Thought is the cause. We are then looking at the after effects and saying that chemical imbalance, hormone imbalance, that's the cause. It's not. That's, if you think negative thinking for 3 minutes, that you can turn genes off that will put you into a depressive state for 24 hours. So it's the thinking that causes. It's what Gabor Mate said about the trauma is caused by the disconnect in your thinking, the disconnect from yourself, which is why two people can have the same experience and have different impact on them. It's not the experience that causes it. It's the thinking that creates the experience, which again is the principles. We are the creators of our experience. It's inside out. It's happening through us. This is why it's the cornerstone of everything, because it explains why people get depression. It explains why there is chemical imbalance. It explains why people suffer from PTSD. It explains why there is suicidal ideation. It explains it. It's the cornerstone of it. So what do you do about it? Well, this is it. You know, this is not prescriptive. What I have found, just as Shanine said, is the best thing I can do is show up, be present, know that they're okay behind that shitstorm of thought that whatever is going on, that it's not going to last forever, and just kind of be with them in that experience. You know, I've worked with people who've had all sorts of really major kind of psychiatric shit going on, you know, who, you know, schizophrenics who believe every thought in their head, you know. And Shanine, you've probably had this as well. It's like there is a chemical imbalance going on in there. And yet if you can be with that person from that space of love, you can see the physiology changing. It's pretty amazing just showing up from that space, what that will do.
I'm going to unmute Shanine because she has something to say or a question.
Thank you, Diane. I just wanted to respond to Nessa's comment about the fact that we can't change our thinking, which is true, we can't, but there is so much power in knowing where our experience is coming from. And if we're able to enable people to have that understanding for themselves, then yes, we can't change our thoughts, but knowing that it is just thought, you know, whatever it is that we're thinking, it has less of an effect, I guess, on our experience and on how we respond and react to those thoughts. So I just felt inspired to share that. That's my feeling on it. But yes, most definitely. Having worked with people that have schizophrenia and have had schizophrenia, been diagnosed with schizophrenia for 30 years, people with, you know, personality disorders that have been told by psychiatrists that they'll never live a normal life, and, you know, having spent time with them in this way, I'm seeing huge shifts. So there's definitely so much power in this understanding to change people's lives. For myself, in managing my own mental health and knowing where my experience is coming from, it's had a huge impact on how I experience life and my perception of life and how I deal with stuff and how I cope with things now. Yeah, the benefits for getting this understanding out there are huge.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I'm not sure what Nessa meant by, but we can't change our thinking. I'm assuming she was saying it in response to something I said. But yeah, I think Shanine, you kind of nailed it. It's not about, again, this goes back to what I always say about it's not prescriptive. Your thinking's going to change. You don't do that. You know, we're not in control of that. And it's kind of just knowing that that's going to happen anyway. That to me is really kind of useful. You know, there's this kind of misconception, I think.
I'd like to add something, if I may, Damian. May I do that? Nessa just wrote something else. That's good to hear, as I was told I had dependent personality disorder and I'd never get better. Damian, the 3P teaches that you can't change your thinking. Let me just address what we can't change our thinking, because it's something, in my experience, when I try to change my thinking, I create more thinking. So, and this is the simplicity. This is why I'm so in love with this paradigm. It's because in doing nothing, my thinking drops, and that is why you've seen people with schizophrenia or with mental disorders. I don't know if I'm misquoting you, but Bill Pettit has seen people with diagnosed. I just spoke to a woman today diagnosed with bipolar disease, 20 years, $1,600 per month, pills, medication, with doctors telling her, if you stop taking the pills, it's suicidal. It's a Russian roulette. You're gonna kill yourself. And as she started to get more deepening of this understanding, it took her 9 months to get off the medication, and she has been off the medication with bipolar. So to me, the more we try to mess around with our thinking and understanding the beauty of how our brain works, but if I shake the snowball, that it's going to remain troubled. But if I let go, and then I fall into that deep space, which goes back to deep listening, I suppose, because this is about deep listening. The thinking changes. So that it's kind of counterintuitive, but the thinking changes, and then we do get insights. And I don't know if that's making any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. Nessa, if you want to have a chat with me, then please do. I'll be happy to. You said that you'll find it does. The 3P teaches you that you can't change your thinking. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, again, I just go back to it's not prescriptive. It's just describing the how it's working. You're alive, you're thinking, you're experiencing, you're thinking. Now, where in that does it say that you can or you can't change your thinking? Because I don't know about that. That to me is like an add-on. That's like an opinion that someone has kind of come up with. Because I don't know whether that's true or not. I always say it's like, I'll tell you what's true, and everything above that is my opinion. Yeah. But certainly from a scientific point of view, yeah, decisions are made before we consciously are aware of them. So, do we consciously change our thinking? No. Scientifically proven we don't do that. Can we pretend that we change our thinking? Yes, absolutely. But where did that thought come from? Yeah. Oh. So you can get yourself in like an infinite loop on that one, which is why I don't. Okay. Why bother? Why go into that? Why think about who's doing it? Who's changing the thinking? Where's that coming from? I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. It's like, but there is a process. This energy's coming through you. You're experiencing the formless energy of life coming through you in the form of thought and brought to life by your consciousness. That's it. And beyond that, there must be something more. There must be something greater. There is something greater than your personal thinking in that moment. And that can be enough to point people towards hope of something different. But Nessa, I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you want.
Fiona would like to add something. Go ahead, Fiona. Hello.
Hi. Thank you. It's an interesting discussion going on here. I think what I wanted to add was I kind of, what I'm hearing is that we're getting a little bit bogged down with this idea of having thinking which we perceive to be not good thinking, and therefore we need to change it. Whereas actually for me, it's really more around not taking our thinking so seriously. So just understanding that, thought is taking form in any moment like this, all the time, changing all the time. Some of it's conscious, some of it's not conscious. But what's important is to be able to see that something that shows up that says, hey, you need to commit suicide. You can't be on this planet anymore. Let's go do something about this. you just don't need to take that thought seriously. You don't need to change it necessarily. It's about not taking it seriously, not listening, and beginning to see that this little voice, this thing that comes up in the head, the ego voice, is actually, that's all it is ego voice. And actually you can just leave it alone. Because thought changes like this, something else will show up in a moment. Because the more we worry about, oh, I need to change this, oh my God, I better do something about this, oh God, I've got to fix this, the more sped up we get, and the more we're stirring the muddy water, and the less we get back into that space of clarity. So it's really about just showing up. I mean, I've been talking to somebody who when he gets in that bad space, he drinks a lot and then it's drugs, and then he's been so close to death that, you know, his heart stopped once. And he is now at the point where he had a really bad relapse recently, and but he's now been sober for about 3 weeks, and he is seeing that the stuff that comes up is just stuff on my head. And you know, he messaged me this morning because he'd woken up and it was crying because, and he had this stuff going on and he felt really low, and that's kind of like the worst day he's had recently. There's been little bits showing up in the last week, but today was like the worst day for him. But he was still in that grounded place. Even though he didn't feel as grounded, he was still in that grounded place where he was actually, for maybe almost the first time ever, was literally seeing the words popping into his head and saying, oh, this monkey brain is coming up with this shit. This monkey brain's coming up with this shit. And I know it would be really nice now to have a drink, but I know that the drink will lead to cocaine, and the cocaine will lead to ending up in hospital again. And, you know, he was actually listening to himself. He was just being aware of himself, of the monkey brain talking in his head. And that, for me, is where the power is. He didn't need to change that thought. He didn't need to medicate it by doing something else to make it go away. He could just leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as someone who's had suicidal thoughts myself quite frequently, I know how hard it is to kind of tell someone to leave their thinking alone when it looks so real to them and they're in the feeling of it. And it really feels like you've got this fire inside of you that's burning you from the inside, and you just want to put it out. So, but something that Sid said that really kind of resonated with me was, if the world could learn not to be scared of their own experience, that alone would change the world. And there is, I guess this is kind of like closing the loop really, which is going back to the deep listening. The bit that worked for me was to know that there was something beyond that feeling. And I think that's very similar to what you were saying, but it's not about, it's almost like it's beyond the thought anyway. It's, you get this all encompassing feeling of kind of like wanting to just be dead. And it's the deep listening kind of then takes you beyond that, which takes you kind of back to, I kind of go back to the connection with your true self in some respects, because it's.
But for some people also, Damian, I mean, for some people, sitting in that quiet space can be even more terrifying because the monkey brain gets more chance to talk when it's quiet.
I kind of avoid going down the monkey brain route because I just want to keep it simple in terms of like, we're alive, we think, we feel that. I don't want to go down the, you know, monkey brain.
Well, I mean, I'm just using the words monkey brain. I mean, you could call it the ego voice, but we all have it.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Have you ever had suicidal thoughts?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll.
Me too.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying, you know, I wasn't telling him, hey, you know, like, leave it alone, because I didn't need to. You know, I mean, I've been talking to this person for the last nearly 6 months now, and he's taught me a shed load, I can tell you. I mean, just by me just being present, which is, you know, probably what you would call deep listening, and just by me being there on the other end of the phone. And believe me, I've been through some serious, difficult stuff with this guy on the phone. You know, there was one point when he was on the other end of the phone, and I didn't know if he was, you know, if he was actually committing suicide on the other end of the phone. And I just had to hang in there. There was nothing else I could do.
Well, you said it. Deep listening. It's that connections piece.
But I can tell you, my ego was monkey braining a lot at that point. But because I know that's what it is, I wasn't listening. I just left it alone, because I knew that for the best thing I could do for him was just to be there and to love him regardless. Because that's all there is.
I think you guys are saying the same things and using different words.
No, we're exactly saying the same things. Absolutely.
But I was interested, Diane, by your point towards the beginning about that you mentioned thinking about this deep listening sounding a bit like a technique.
I know it's not a technique. I mean, just right now, there was a patch, there was just, and I was hoping that we would stay quiet just to experience this deep listening. It's just, we drop into that automatically. There's no technique. I was just wondering, I was exploring it, I think maybe to generate a discussion or to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit, but I mean, I've experienced this connection even now, even in this group. I've at points we've all gone quiet, and this is what we are talking about.
But also, I think that's true, and I think perhaps when you're teaching a group of people who've not come across the principles before, getting to that quiet space is beneficial. But it's not necessary. Because when you're, like in Nepal when the earthquake was happening, nobody said, hold on a second, earthquake, I need some quiet space, then I'll be fine, then I can be in deep, just a little bit of deep listening, and then I'll be fine, and then I'll know what to do. You don't get that in that moment. Dr. Bill talks about, the woman who gets pulled out of a car wreck and she suddenly realizes her child is strapped in the back seat and the car's on fire. She doesn't think about it. She's in there. She gets the child out the car. There's no deep listening going on. There's no waiting. There's just literally do it now.
Yeah, but the context now is different.
Yeah, we're not talking about deep listening as listening, and we haven't done.
No. No. The context now is different. Pardon, Damian?
We're talking about deep listening as connection.
Yeah, not in. I mean, mind. It kicks in. I mean, if I'm in a, I'm not going to stop and deep listen. I mean, excuse it, but who would do that? I'm talking about. I was interested in deep listening, as in. I think what fascinates me most in all this conversation is, apart from the fact that I'm a coach, is that when I deeply listen to me, I notice when I deeply listen to me and don't bypass me, I'm automatically connecting to me. And if I have this ability to connect to me, then it means that I'm going to have a better ability, I'll connect with people more, and that's what interests me ultimately, even outside a coaching conversation. Just in a conversation, I think it's so valuable in my daily life. But if I were in an emergency situation, I mean...
Okay, yeah, okay. Then I apologize. I'd heard something that you said that I made into something different.
It could be.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, I'm glad you raised this anyway.
Deep listening equals connection, then that's fine. That puts it into a different context altogether. So that's fine. Yeah.
Yes, completely. That's what I was.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, I got to go. So unfortunately, I've really enjoyed being here in the group. It's been great.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed it too. And I don't know if you want to share about where you're at, what you're doing, how people can find you, Damian. I'd like to give you the space to do that. Would you like to?
Yeah, well, my website's rethinkingbusiness.biz and vetshealth.co.uk, which is the new site that's up and running, and we're running CPD courses from May. If anyone knows any vets that they can point in that direction. The first one we're starting in Swindon. And then just my Rethinking Business site is just there. I'm just putting blogs on there, and if anyone knows anyone that needs some help, either one-to-one coaching or especially down the suicide route, then please just get in touch. Nessa, just get in touch anywhere, and we'll have a session, and I'm sure I can point you in the right direction.
Okay, you mentioned a podcast that would be interesting for us to hear. When I post this recording, I'm going to put this on YouTube because I think there's value in people listening to this conversation. Yeah. Would you include the link on my Facebook page to the podcast? Is that okay, Damian?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I heard a couple of things. Thank you for your contributions, and the next webinar is with Fiona. Yeah, it's next month, and the subject that she would like to talk about is, remind me, Fiona. I'm sorry, I'm really tired now.
We hadn't finalized.
Decided, okay, but it would be very interesting. I will.
We talked about a few things, and you said, "Oh, I think you should do a webinar on this," and I was like, "Okay, let's have a conversation about this."
Okay.
I can't remember around. I think we were talking. There were several kind of topics going on in the thread. One of which was, around my experience of working with people with addictions, and around love as well. There was another one around love.
Okay. So, guys, thank you very much, and I'll see you online.
Lovely. Thanks, Diane.
Okay. Thank you, Damian. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Okay. Bye.